All right, folks. So we are continuing our discussions around A2A protocol. And in this one, we will do a simple hello world type A2A protocol implementation without any such real life agents. So we'll build a dummy agent which does not use a LLM. So it will simply return a hello world using the agent. And that we will use to describe how the coding part is done in case of A2A protocol, right? So this is what we discussed in the last video, that we have these components in the A2A protocol where we have a A2A client, a A2A server, and the client kind of at first discovers the available agents in the agent server with the help of agent card. So in case of the agent card, we have all the details like name, skills, capabilities of the agent, what are the inputs and output modes that the agent supports. And we also mentioned that the agent card is typically exposed in this particular URL, right? And with this URL, the client kind of discovers the capabilities of the agent. Once the discovery phase is done, then the client kind of sends a request to the server using the task. Task comprises of the message, and the message comprises of the roles between the client and server. And each of the message also contains part, which either is a text part or a file part or a data part, right? So once the server gets the request from the client, then it start executing the task. And if the server has the capability of push notification enabled, then it will keep on sending the status of the task to the client. And also if the streaming is enabled, then also the server kind of sends the intermediate outputs to the client. And if the streaming is disabled, then the server will finally send the response, which is nothing but artifact. So that artifact typically are like generated files, structured data, or the multimodal data as an output from the agent, from the server to the A2A client, right? So this is what the architecture looks like. And what now we will do is we will try to do it in a simple hello world type of A2A protocol implementation in terms of the code, right? So before going into the code, this is how the communication also looks like. The client sends the request to get the agent card, and at the server side we will have another new component, which is nothing but the agent executor. So this agent executor is nothing but it wraps the agent. Once the server sends the agent card to the client, then client sends a task, and then the agent executor starts the execution of the task, right? So this agent executor, which wraps the agent, it is mainly responsible to execute the tasks that has been assigned by the client, right? And once that is done, then it sends the artifact back to the client as a response for the client, right? So now in terms of code, so in the code we will have mainly three files. So one of them is a main.py, which typically runs the server. It receives the request from the client, and then it passes the control to the agent executor, right? And as I mentioned, the agent executor is nothing but it will wrap the agent, and it will get the request, and it will help in the execution of the task that is sent by the client, right? So we will also implement this agent executor.py file, and then we will have the client.py, right? So this client typically creates the task with messages, and the messages kind of comprises of the part. So that part that we will use, that would be a text part. So in the text part, we will have the task ID along with the textual message, and that we will send as a request to the server, and then the server will execute that task using the agent executor. And after that, the client will receive the response back from the remote agent, right, which will be displayed, right? So we will slowly implement each of these files, each of these three files, the main.py, the agent executor.py, and the client.py, right? Now let's move into the coding part. So before going into the coding part, we need to do some initial setup. So at first we will create a directory or the project folder, which is A2A. Then we will move inside that A2A folder. And after that, what we will do is we will create an environment. So we will use UV as a package manager for this A2A project. and we will use the Python version which is 3.13. So we will need to run this command. So this will actually create the environment. So if we can activate this environment using this source dot venv command. So this will activate the environment. Once the environment is activated, then you can initialize this environment. So I have given all the steps. You just need to follow these commands which are present in this readme file, and after that you can start doing the installations, right? So we will use this uv add and then the package names, which will quickly do the installation. So this is much more faster if you compare with the pip installation. So you can see, like, as I have started and all the installation got completed. So that is the benefit of using uv, which will do the initialization and the installing the dependencies much more faster way, right? So then we will create this A2A hello world folder, so where we will create these three files which we already discussed, and after that we will start running it, right? So now let's go into each of these files. So the first one is a main.py, this main.py, which will actually start the server, right? So if you remember, one of the key ingredient of the server was agent card. While creating the agent card, we will need the skills, so that we will create here, right? So you can see we are initializing this agent skill, where we are mentioning the id, then the name of that particular agent, and a small description what that agent does, and the tags, right? So these tags are typically that will be used to either select any of the available agent card, and also the examples, right? So these examples will help the client to decide which agent I should use. Then we can start initializing this agent card. We will give a name. After that, we'll give a description, then the URL, right? So where the agent will be exposed. So that URL we need to give here. So we are exposing the agent in this localhost 7001 port. And after that, we mention what are the other capabilities of the agent, right? What is the default input mode? So that is text, and the default output mode are also text, right? So then we mention the skill, we give a version, and then we mention what are the capabilities of the agent, right? So if you remember, in the last video I mentioned, like, typically the server communicates with the client with either using a push notification or by streaming. So just to make it very simple, so we will disable the push notification as false, and we will also disable the streaming with the value of false, right? So this agent card will be used by the client to discover the capabilities of the agent, right? So after that, what we will do is we will create a request handler. So this request handler will use the agent executors. Also, we will use a task store, where the intermediate outputs that has been generated while executing the task, that will be stored in this task store, right? So we'll use a in-memory store for that. And after that, we will create a server, right? So we'll create a A2A Starlet application. So there we will mention this request handler and also the agent card that we have already created, right? So after that, the server would be created, and then we can run the server, right? So we'll use this uvcon, and we will do a server.build, and we will run the server in this host URL, right? And we will also mention what is the port. So we can see, like, we have used the agent executor here. Now let's go and explain what this agent executor looks like. So you can see this agent executor is nothing but a wrapper of the agent. So this is where we are creating the agent. So this is a very simple agent, like, which is named as hello world, and there we are just implementing the invoke function, and it's just returning the value as hello world, right? If we use a proper LangGraph agent, so that we will build here, and after that we will also implement the invoke method, and we will implement this agent executor, which will inherit from this, right, which is the agent executor. And these are some of the methods which we have to implement in this agent executor. Execute is one of them, and the cancel is other one, right? So in the init function, we are initializing the agent. So once the agent initialization is done, then we will implement the execute function which will get the context and also the event queue. So this event queue will store all the events that are going on between the server and client. So that will also, we will get the event queue here. And once that is done, then we will do this agent.invoke, which will actually call the agent using the invoke method, and we will get back the result. And that result we will store in the event queue, right? So once that is done, then we will also need to implement the cancel, which we are just doing a dummy implementation here. So this is what the agent executor looks like. So this agent executor will just wrap this agent, and where we need to implement this execute and the cancel method. So in the client.py, we need to mention like where the public agent card path is. So we know, as we have discussed in the last video, that we use this well-known agent.json where the agent's capabilities are exposed as the agent card, and also we need to mention what is the base URL, right? So once that is done, then we will initialize this resolver. So once we create the resolver, then using that resolver we try to fetch the card, right? So we'll use this resolver dot get agent card to get the public agent card, and that we get here, and we initialize in this particular variable. It'll initialize the client. So in the client, we mention this HTTPX client and also the agent card. With that, we will initialize the client. So once the client is initialized, then we will create the message, right? So if you remember, we send the communication from the client to server using the message, and the message kind of consists of parts, right? So we can see we are creating a text part where we are mentioning the text as hello. As I mentioned previously in the last video, that parts are typically three types. So one of them is a text part, and as our communication method is text here, so we are creating the part as text part. And also we are mentioning what would be my message ID, and also we are mentioning the role, right? So every message should have a role. So here the role is user, because we are sending the message from the client. So the client is typically where the users are sending the message, right? So once we create this message, which is nothing but the message payload, and after that we will create the request, right? So this is where we are actually sending the task, right? So where we will get the ID of the task, which we are leveraging UUID to create a unique ID. Then we are passing the message payload here, right? So after that we create the request, and the request then gets sent from the client, right? So we send the message using this request, and we get back the response, right? So after that we can just dump the response as a JSON file, and that we will print to the console, right? And we can run the client using this method, right? So this is what the implementation looks like. So now let's run each of these components. So we will mainly run the server at first. So at first I need to go inside my folder, which is nothing but A2A hello world. So we will initialize that, and now we can see we can go to this URL and see what this URL holds, right? So if I go to this URL and I paste it here, and after that we can mention this well-known agent.json, right? So that will give me back the agent card, right? So now the server kind of exposed this agent card as a public agent card, and using this, now the client can get to know like what are the capabilities of this particular agent, what it supports, and in which URL it is exposed, what are the default input and output mode, and whether it supports the push notification or streaming, right? So all this can be exposed now to the client. Now let's start the client here in a separate terminal. So I will create a separate terminal, and there I should run the my client, right? So uv run client .py. So let's go through this in detail. So you can see that it's at first it's fetching the public agent card. So you can see all the details of the agent card. Now once the client knows the agent card, and by that the client now knows what are the capabilities of the agent that is present at the A2A server, and then it will send the message, right? So you can see it is sending the message, and this is where the message will be created and it will be sent, and then we get back the response, right? So this is where we get the response. So now we can see we have clear communications between the client to the A2A server where the agent has been exposed, right? So similarly, we can see the movements at the server side where the agent is kind of at first calling the agent.json agent card, and after that it's getting a post request where the request has been sent from the client to the server, and we get back the message, right? And we can get the message clearly here, right? So this is what a simple implementation of A2A protocol looks like. So in the future videos we will try to do a more deep dive using a more sophisticated agent, right? So with this I will end this video. I hope you like it. See you in the next one.